when you emerge from the abyss and move towards enlightenment, one thing you can encounter is the wisdom of the prophets, right? The genuine protection and brilliance of the tradition. And beyond that is the spirit itself, which is the force that gave rise to the tradition to begin with, and which still makes itself manifest within you as your upward striving and transformative consciousness. According to a Yakut informant, the future shaman, the spirits carry the future shaman to hell and shut him in a house for 3 years. Here he undergoes his initiation. This is images of suffering. The spirits cut off his head, which they set off to one side, for the novice must watch his own dismemberment with his own eyes, and hack his body to bits, which are later distributed among the spirits of various sicknesses. We experience that when we say in our own lives, things really fell apart for me. I didn't know where I was, right? I didn't know where I was going. I had no notion of what was happening. Everything was turned upside down, right? It is only on this condition that the future shaman will obtain the power of healing, right? Voluntary acceptance of the transformative process is the key to the mastery of healing. The psychoanalysts knew that. They insisted that practitioners of analytic psychology underwent their own analysis before they practiced, right? That's the wounded and resurrected healer as the archetype of, what would you say, archetype of the physician. His bones are then covered with new flesh, and in some cases, he's also given new blood. Blood is emblematic of spirit, let's say. That's why there's an injunction in the Old Testament against consuming the blood of animals, and the flesh is something that's more solid and material, let's say. And so the future shaman is awarded a new structure and a new spirit. This happens in the story of Abraham, by the way, who makes sequential sacrifices as he pursues the spirit of adventure. He transforms so completely that he's given a new name. Same thing happens to Jacob, who becomes Israel, who's the chosen of God, because that's what Israel means. And what it means is that if you allow yourself to transform upward, allow that process of death and resurrection to continue, and transform yourself completely, you'll turn into something so different from what you were, it will be as if you're a new person, right? That's a baptism, by the way. One of the specific characteristics of shamanic initiations, aside from the candidate's dismemberment, is his reduction to the state of a skeleton. It's a formidable process, right? But engaged in with faith and courage, with knowledge of the sequence, then even that descent into the inferno can be something that speaks of the light that will eventually shine. And God only knows how true that is of all the misadventures in your life. You know, we said already that every treasure has a dragon. That's the essence of the hero myth. There's no opportunity without threat, but the converse of that could well be true. There is no obstacle without its opportunity.
And that's something to really understand when something really terrible comes your way. It's like,
well, maybe there's something here. If I could only see it, if I was only careful enough, faithful enough, courageous enough to see it, maybe there's something here to learn. Proportionate to the terrible, what would you say, proportionate to the suffering that the experience constitutes. You know, many of the people I know who have become wise in their journey through life became so not least because something terrible came their way and they mastered it. So that's a very useful thing to know, you know, because terrible things will come your way, and you're going to want to know why you should possibly, or even how you could maintain faith when everything seems so unjust. It's like you're called upon to maintain faith no matter what happens to you, right? That's the moral injunction. And that's partly because imagine something terrible happens to you and then you're angry and miserable and bitter and resentful. Well, then all you're doing is magnifying your misery. No matter how undeserved it is, it's not an attitude that's going to help you. I know that's a lot to ask, you know, that no matter what you're suffering, no matter how unjust, that you maintain your faith in yourself and in the cosmic order. But what's the alternative, right? Like a bleak resentment, and that's just the starting point of a very terrible descent, because it's first resentment, and then it's anger, and then it's vengeance, and God only knows what it is after vengeance. Murder, genocide, things go from bad to worse very rapidly, just like they go from good to better very rapidly. One of the most specific characteristics of shamanic initiations, aside from the candidate's dismemberment, is his reduction to the state of a skeleton, to the essence, right, to the bones. We are here in the presence of a very ancient religious idea which belongs to the hunter culture. Bone symbolizes the final root of animal life, the mold from which the flesh continually rises. Reduced to your fundamentals. That's the motif of voluntarily undertaken sacrifice. Reduction to the fundamentals. Right, that's how you identify what the fundamentals are. That's how you become aware of what they are. That's how you consciously recraft your life in relationship to your discovery of those fundamentals. It is from the bone that man and animals are reborn. For a time, they maintain themselves in an existence of the flesh. Then they die, and their life is reduced to the essence concentrated in the skeleton from which they will be born again. I would like, even now, to stress the fact that the psychopathology of the shamanic vocation is not profane. It does not belong to ordinary symptomatology. It has an initiatory structure and signification. In short, it reproduces the traditional mystical pattern. That reduction to chaos and the reconstituting of the world, that's known as flood, right? It's the same idea. That chaos that people fall into, that's the same chaotic potential that the Spirit of God that traverses the, what would you say, the primordial waters, encounters at the beginning of time and extracts order from. That's the same process that characterizes the human beings who are made in the image of the divine creator, right? Your capacity to encounter chaotic potential, contend with it, and cast it into the order that's good. The essence of consciousness, because consciousness deals with what has not yet been mastered. The essence of the process of maturation. The essence of adventure. The essence of romantic adventure. The essence of relationship. The predicate of social order, right? And the process upon which the regeneration of the state depends, right? That's why you have the right to free speech, so that you can engage in that process of regeneration, so that the state doesn't stagnate and stultify. The total crisis of the future shaman, sometimes leading to complete disintegration of the personality and to madness, can be evaluated not only as an initiatory death, but, as I said, also as a symbolic return to the pre-cosmogonic chaos. That's that potential that exists always and at the beginning of time. That's the field of potential that you apprehend when you consider what you could do with what's in front of you, for better or for worse. That's what your consciousness always contends with. That's the dragon that you're always wrestling with, insofar as you're conscious. That's what consciousness does and is, to the amorphous and indescribable state that precedes any cosmogony, any establishment of order. What is that pre-cosmogonic chaos? William James, who established experimental psychology, I used to work in the building named after him at Harvard. William James wrote about this partly because he learned what it was by experimenting with nitrous oxide, which is a relatively harmless hallucinogen, which was quite popularly distributed in the late 1800s. Latent information. Pure experience is the name I give to the original flux of life. Before reflection has categorized it. Only newborn babes and persons in semi-coma from sleep, drugs, illnesses, or blows can have an experience pure in the literal sense of that which is not yet any definite what, though ready to be all sorts of things, right? The potential that you experience when you wake up in the morning and apprehend the dawn of the new day, full both of oneness and of manyness. He definitely sounds like a 1968 hippie. Full both of oneness and of manyness, but in respects that don't appear, changing throughout, yet so confusedly that its phases interpenetrate, and no points either of distinction or of identity can be caught. A poem that he wrote in the throes of nitrous oxide intoxication. No verbiage can give it, so it's outside the domain of semantic conceptualization, because the verbiage, the verbal representation, is other. Incoherent, coherent, the same. And it fades, and it's infinite, and it's infinite. Don't you see the difference? Don't you see the identity? Constantly, opposites united. The same me telling you to write and not to write. Extreme, extreme, extreme. Something and other than that thing. Intoxication and otherness than intoxication. Every attempt at betterment, every attempt at otherment it fades forever and forever as we move. He is trying in the throes of his poetic inspiration to conceptualize the domain of that which has not yet been conceptualized, right? The remnant mystery in your marital partner, the part of yourself that you do not understand, the elements of the world that are not yet revealed but could be in consequence of your actions. How do you define that which has not yet appeared? Possibility, chaos, plenitude, opportunity, terror, hell, chaos, all of that, right? That's the domain that consciousness contends with and the domain into which it can sink when it disintegrates because of the misalignment or inadequacy of its aim. Now, as we know, for archaic and traditional cultures, this symbolic return to chaos, this is a good thing to know in your own life as well, is equivalent to preparing a new creation. That's the story of Noah and the flood. And that pattern of story is extremely well distributed all around the world. The notion that things can fall apart so badly that nothing remains except the seed from which something new can be born. It follows that we may interpret the psychic chaos of the future shaman as a sign that the profane man, the inadequate man, the insufficient man is being dissolved and a new personality being prepared for birth. That's a good attitude to adopt as a matter of habit. The purpose of the most fundamental forms of religious training is to train you to understand that that's what you are, always. You're not what you are. You're what you could yet be. And when you are forced to choose between what you are, stable and predictable and comfortable though that may be, and what you could be, the golden rule is to always choose what you could yet be, right? That justifies the sacrifice. That's also that upward aiming spiral, and it's the adventure that justifies the suffering of your life. Now, that's something to understand.